12,000 people, and we're still, you know, months behind on this system of taking care of folks, let alone the federal system, but just in the state system. So try and take a strategic approach on, you know, responsiveness to the community, getting information that's relevant to the Valley, out to the Valley, and it's been pretty successful. So to the extent anybody has any other things you want to share with us that we want to put into our newsletter that's Valley-centric stuff. I mean, I don't care about the announcement of government programs. Every office puts that stuff out. And the open rate's been pretty impressive. You know, 30,000, 40,000 people at its peak. So those kind of things were set in place to say, okay, how do you take your resources and be the most valuable resource to the community? Then I focused, I'm co-chair of the Economic Recovery Group, working in conjunction with the Assembly and well as the Senate, to sit back and to say, okay, once the federal money stops, there's going to be a cliff. What do? We don't have the ability to print money in the state. And what my experience has been, you know, I started in this business as a young kid when Ronald Reagan was governor. I was working in the state capitol for a guy running for lieutenant governor, and I've seen all these ups and downs. And my experience has been that when we go out and cut the heck out of the state budget, you know, they talk about a 50-some billion. I think it's about $85 billion hole, quite frankly. And when we talk about that, we go in and we cut the budget, and there's all this collateral damage of layoffs and contracts that are affected and all of this stuff. So the idea was to try to hold the budget as harmless as possible. It's not just economic outcomes, and, you know, whether it's an office that gets closed that you guys can't get access to, or whether it's social services that get cut off because of furloughs or whatever, it's a downward spiral because the impact on society to all of us and as taxpayers still exists. So the idea was to do everything we could to hold the budget harmless. And there's some differences this time. I had worked with Schwartz and Schnitzel way back in the old days, and we came up with this idea of the rainy day fund. Jerry Brown brilliantly filled it up, and so we also added 2 more rainy day funds. So instead of the normal state budget reserve under the Constitution of 1%, which would be $2 billion, $2.2 billion, we have 3 rainy day funds. We have the big rainy day fund, which had like 17, 18 billion in it, a lot of cash for most states, not for California. 2, we did an education rainy day fund, and 3rd, we did a social service rainy day fund. So we had about 20 billion bucks. That put us in a different position than where we were before in terms of the economic downturn. Second, the federal government, despite all the rhetoric, and the governor's been pretty good with respect to Trump, you know, and not just sticking his finger in his eye. We got a $9.5 billion check from the feds. We've gotten some laws changed that help us. They've given us interest-free loans so far, and I'll talk about this for unemployment insurance. That's about $20 billion so far. And even though there's a tension between Pelosi and the Senate, you know, Pelosi's asking for $3 trillion. Senate was at $1 trillion. They'll compromise at $2 trillion. It'll happen by the first week of August. And, you know, the amount of money that goes to state and local governments as a consequence of that will be sufficient, in my judgment, to tide us over for the contingent budget hole we have, plus the next year's budget, unless the place just completely crashes. And who knows, the way things are going now with the numbers the way they're going, no one can predict that. But we're being as responsible as we can be. In addition, the federal government, the Federal Reserve, has put out a $500 billion, what's called municipal liquidity facility. I've been in touch with Mnuchin's chief of staff, put me in touch by Mike Milken. I've been in touch with the Federal Reserve, and we're trying to figure the guidance on that money to be able to access as much as we can. It's really not something that works very well. The state gets about 40 billion of that, but we want to put vehicles in place to access it if we need it. Just again, smart financial planning. Now that's the budget piece. I only share that with you because as you plan for economic recovery, my judgment is that you do not want to touch the budget. So everything that we've done has been along the context of economic recovery, which hopefully will come out shortly. And the governor has his task force, which I just was on the phone with the staff. That's one of the reasons I was a little late to the call on this issue, on his economic recovery thing. So you have this kind of concentric universe over here, which is the budget. I'm creating a concentric universe over here on economic recovery. How do you get cash available for needed purposes, whether it's for small business or childcare or whatever else it might be, does not invade the budget? Because if you invade the budget for those things, you're just causing another part of the balance sheet to go upside down. You got to be smart economic planners. So in that separate bubble, my judgment is one, you know, can't raise taxes, even then I don't support this split roll property tax thing that's on the ballot, just much to the chagrin of a lot of my Democratic colleagues. Second, you can go and do bond issues on the ballot, which in my judgment is stupid. I don't think voters are going to want to write checks for bond issues. And if they do, even if they do, it's stupid because you're not going to get the money for over a year. And thirdly, from all the indicators, from talking to all the people in the financial markets, the cost of the money is going to be dramatically more expensive. Right now, a one-year treasury is 16 basis points. It's a little more than 1/10 of 1%. A one-year CD is 1%. Cost of money is near free. Talking to my friends at Berkshire Hathaway, some directors there, and they went out and borrowed a bunch of money from Japan and money from Europe. They got $137 billion in the bank, and they're sitting on it because they know next year money's going to be more expensive and they can loan it and make a profit, right? So the idea from everybody I talk to is if you're going to borrow whatever, borrow now when money's cheap, act fast, get it right, don't add new taxes, and that's the approach. And my general view is that if the federal dollars stop, as soon as it stops, when you were talking, David, in the intro about the PPP money, we've got to be prepared to take care of folks. That being said, the problem we're trying to solve is we need immediate money. And the other problem with cash, with bonds, is bonds, you can buy a building or you can buy a park, but you can't use it to hire people. You can't use it for worker training. You can't use it for childcare. You can't use it for small business support, right? It doesn't work. So immediate cash, cheap cash, fourth quarter of 2020, first 2 quarters of 2022, to be prepared from when those white walkers come in. Basically, in essence, establishes a series of lines of credit that don't impose upon the budget. So our approach generally, and I'll talk specifically about small business in a moment, but I think the architecture is important for you to have confidence in where we're going. And this is not just some near-term political blah, blah. I mean, I have talked to the biggest bankers and Standards & Poor's and everybody along the way, trying to really vet this because we've got to have realistic solutions and not just fancy bills with fancy titles that, you can issue a press release for, but don't really achieve any deliverables. So there's really the approach. I mean, the approach is this. First, I reviewed over 2 months ago every single issued but authorized but unutilized bond in the state of California. Those fall into 3 tranches. The first are school bonds. Do you know there's $52 billion of available headroom for schools in California on school bonds that have been authorized, but they have not fully spent their allotment? $52 billion. In addition, there's about $33 billion of local bond issues that have been authorized, but they haven't been issued. And there's another 30-some billion dollars of money in the state where they've been authorized but not issued. So the voters have authorized the money, no requirement for a vote. Money's cheap. Bottom line, however, despite those numbers, over 3,000 bond issues I looked at. I mean, it's crazy numbers. You should see I was supposed to send a list of, I forgot to send that to Tony Thurman. Let's see, Superintendent of Public Instructions. 1 second, I got just reminded me. Thurman, I was going to send him.
Always the multitasker.
Yeah, Thurman, school bonds list. Okay, and so the upshot is there's about $10 billion of that money that could be immediately available in authorized but unissued bonds that would then put construction works to projects, construction workers, all the collateral benefits in that. Why? Some bond issues are stuck sitting up in the state architect's office, some other ones, other reasons. So despite how big that whole, that potential is, the reality after we scrubbed it, it's maybe, 10% of the number of what's out there, but okay, we'll take it. It's $10 billion, it's cash that infuses money in the economy. Second, I don't know how many people are familiar with the term securitization, but basically what securitization means is that there's a current fee out there that's off balance sheet. It's off balance sheet. It doesn't affect the budget. For example, transportation tax, gas taxes. Gas taxes get paid. It's not part of the budget. It's a separate number. The money is required in a lockbox to be allocated for transportation. Those fees come in every single day. There's fees on telephone bills. There's fees on all sorts of stuff. And if you can basically give a security interest to a bondholder, those don't require a vote of the people because you're not looking at the full faith and credit of the state. You're only looking to the revenue stream from that fee. And you basically, in essence, what you do is you say, okay, bondholders, there's $1,000 a year that comes in, lend me $20,000, and I will assign the right title and interest of that $1,000 a year to you as a source of repayment of your principal and your interest. That's securitization. So what we're doing is, on the securitization front, we're looking to, I'm giving you previews. None of this is out in the public yet, so don't say anything, Tammy. So in any event, just giving you a hard time. So for example, we're going to probably do, I'm guessing, $6 billion of transportation funds. We have a 10-year, what's called a shop report, which is a list of all the road repair projects that need to be done. We're going to basically borrow that money, so we get a slug of money in advance. Instead of taking 10 years to do the road repairs, we'll do them in 18 months. It's good for everybody. The road repairs get done. You know, it's only for transportation, but it puts a lot of people to work, let alone helps. You know, it's work progress administration. This is old school thinking in that sense. Then we're looking at environmental pieces, and we're looking at fires in the north, where the fires are so important, where there's revenue streams on people's utility bills that can then be just allocated to pay back folks. We're looking at a whole host of different revenue streams that are off balance sheet, that don't impact the budget, but that can infuse cash into the system as quickly as possible and hire people. And that's the second idea. The third idea is we're asking people, if they so choose, can prepay your taxes. Why is that important? We're basically moving money from good times, hopefully, to bad times. We need cash today. We need it today. We'll give you a rate of return on a discount rate that's better than you're going to get for Treasury. It's better than what you're going to get at your bank for a CD. Maybe it'll be 2.5% instead of 1% or 0.1%. And we'll spend that money, and we'll get a pot of money and put it in what's called an economic recovery fund. That economic recovery fund achieves the deliverable that we're trying to do. That economic, hold on one second. Diane, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of the meeting. Bye. Sorry. Diane Griffiths, our old chief of staff, David. I always take her call. 1 second. Basically, the upshot is that this economic recovery fund, you know, we have, if you look at these big tech companies, take a look at what their market cap is from January 1 through the 10th of July, $1.8 trillion in growth. Do you know that Tesla, that only is bigger than Toyota made 10 million cars, Tesla made 400,000. Tesla's the most valuable car company in the world. Tesla's market cap is $289 billion, okay? General Motors is 61 billion. Ford Motor is 42 billion. Chevron is 151 billion. It's crazy what's happened in the marketplace and this extraordinary growth. So we're literally going to these companies and say, lend us the money. We'll give you a small rate of return. We're going to let everybody else do it and prepay your taxes. And we'll pay a small little of interest, but the value to society by having money available to do, you know, we had McKinsey do a study in Los Angeles with the LA County delegation, and where do we need jobs and who do we got to put to work? Restaurant workers and janitors and all these other people. We got to get these folks to work and get them off unemployment. We got to get them productive into society and the like. And so we're looking to do that. We got to do childcare for people who have their kids at home and make sure that's supplemented, and things that fundamentally go to the core of the issue of economic recovery. Some of that's for small business, which I'll talk about separately in a moment. But the idea of this economic recovery fund, we talked about it a bigger number. I don't know what the ultimate number is. We're dealing with the lawyers who always give you a hard time. The lawyers always give you a hard time. Unfortunately, I'm one of those, but I'm not a lawyer who nitpicks. I say, you know, can you come in my office and I say, what's the problem you got to solve? And I said, I'll get a solution. I don't tell you all the noise and stuff. But in any event, so we're working on the economic recovery fund. And then the fourth thing that we're doing is we're trying to use the state's balance sheet. Again, everything that we're doing is not to impose upon the budget and give us a headroom. And the idea behind the vouchers, by the way, is that if a voucher is good in 2024, this gives us 2021, 2022, and 2023 to use this money to help the economy before there's an imposition where we have to start paying it back and hopefully get on our feet. It's the only option that we have in terms of trying to deal with the larger issues, some of which comes to small business, I'll tell you about in a moment. And none of this stuff is yet in print and stuff. It's all, you know, you're getting the preview from me. We still got the governor and everybody else to be in the play, but they're getting a big sense of the big picture because you're Sherman Oaks, baby. So in any event, The fourth area is using the state's balance sheet. So if my friend David Phelps is a billionaire and I can't afford a house, I go to David, hey, David, I can't afford this house. Will you do me a favor? Can you co-sign the loan? He says, sure, Hertzberg, go to my bank. And I go back in the bank, oh, you're a friend of Phelps. Not only are we going to give you a loan, it's approved. And secondly, we'll give you 2.5% loan interest rates instead of 5, no problem. He bears a risk that if I default, but he's not writing a check to me. Well, the state has a pretty big balance sheet. So what we're looking to do, and it's still very challenging. I call the treasurer's office, one other note while you're sitting here. In LA City, we've approved 16,000 ADUs. San Fernando Valley, it's like 6,000. These ADUs are places where we can build housing between $50,000 and $100,000. They're not these. I mean, you hear these numbers of what you got to build per unit for a little stunk in a room, $500,000–$600,000. It's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy. So ADUs, especially in the Northeast Valley, have been wildly successful. But what happens with ADUs is you go to the bank and the bank says, well, you know, you got plenty of equity, but how are you going to pay it back? And you say, well, I'm going to rent it. And the bank says to you, well, you got to give me a 2-year a seasoned rent roll. I said, well, I haven't built the place yet. So they won't lend. If we go to the Cal HFA, have them put up a fund not from tax dollars, but a revenue bond from them, that can lever up at least 20 times. So if we put up $250 million, we can get $5 billion worth of loans out there, which will produce about 50,000 units. You know, and we can lower the FICO scores and all these other things to get these units built. So you put in 50,000 units. The county of Los Angeles last year, the entire county, 26,000 units, only 4,000 are affordable, right? And we have 109,000 102,000 we have to meet next year, 49,000 affordable. So all this noise you hear about, all this money we're spending, what are we producing? So we're going to try both with these ADUs and the like. Hey, who are you talking to, Tammy? So in any event, we are trying to come up with ways on the housing piece. We've got a series of other ways to try to do leverage for housing, which I can talk about that we're doing. We're doing rent program. I can talk about that, that we're moving through the system. But we're really scrubbing and trying to be smart about this stuff. You're reading some stupid stuff that have come out, and you know we've killed a number of those bills, and I'm hoping we kill more of them so that we have some rational thinking. Because at the end of the day, there's only 4 things you can do for economic recovery. Just 4. 1, you can confiscate money from people in the form of fees and taxes with the power of government. 2, you can ask people to lend you money. 3, you can change the rules. So it's easier for people to deal with it. And I'll talk about that in a second. And 4, you can use the balance sheet. On the changing of the rules, we're doing a lot of things for housing that are expediting the environmental review and doing by right. We're allowing cities that have shopping centers where the shopping centers are going out of business to convert it to housing by right. Office buildings, the same thing, by right. And so it can happen much faster and avoid the rules. We're looking to, if people remember, we had these stadium laws where we would do these big stadiums and we would let them expedite this stuff if they're over 100 million. We're going to extend that to a host of projects all over the place. So we anticipate $30 billion worth of construction in California in the near term being immediately started up because we're changing the rules and making it easier for folks to get out there. So, I mean, we're trying to create the biggest chunk possible in the most difficult of circumstances. I can address small business issues with you and we've been talking about on the table if you're interested. But I wanted to frame out for you, and I know a little bit of it is a little, up in the ether a little bit, but it frames it in financial architecture that I think is informed by reasonably intelligent thinking and scrubbed by a ton of people and trying to not just play for fancy titles of legislation, but we can't screw around. We don't get this right. This is a big deal. We'll further exacerbate the problem. This is a big, big, big problem. So Dave, you want me to go to small business?
Yes, please.
I can't really inform you too much about the Fed stuff. I do know that a bunch more money is going to come down the pike, but again, it's short term. The impact's to everybody. So let's walk through it. First, this governor has said to anybody that collects sales tax, and if you have a business that is under $5 million, normally you collect the sales tax, you pay it over to us, It's trust money. We've allowed you to keep the first $50,000 as a loan. I'm hoping, I don't know if we have the money, but I'm advocating for turning that loan into a working capital grant to small businesses of 50 Gs. Maybe there'll have to be some kind of means test on it, and whatever the case may be, but to try to get some cash in the hands of folks too. Again, that's just Hertzberg think, but what is the case is the governor has said you don't have to pay your tax for a year, but you got to pay it at the end, and I suspect we'll deal with that over time. And that'll be a pretty big hit to people. Second, I know it's not, but some businesses that are going out of business, if you're somebody, you personally signed a guarantee on your lease and you got 5 years left on your lease and your landlord comes after you. We're looking to increase the size of your homestead exemption on your home so that the landlord can't come in and take your house and foreclose on your home. Because what happens is if you have a house that's worth 750 Gs, you got 250 against it, you got 500,000 in equity, you get a judgment against you for 250 on the lease. We're going to try to protect your home so that if you lost your business, which is bad enough, you don't lose your home, right? We're looking to a series of other tax credit programs for disadvantaged communities and businesses to try to help those guys. We're looking at unemployment insurance to the extent that, unemployment insurance is great, but it manifests itself in payroll taxes. And all of a sudden, in 2008, we had a downturn. It took us 10 years to pay that off, $300 million a year in interest. Well, you paid it off. So we're looking if there's any, and this unemployment stuff to protect small businesses from increase in taxes, payroll taxes, because who cares? It's a tax increase to you. So we're looking to protect you on payroll tax there. There's a series of other ideas that are in discussion, but the small business issue is quite complicated because, for example, I've owned a number of restaurants over my years. 40% of all restaurants go out of business. They just do, right? We try them, we make it, they don't go out. We've all seen it. Well, do you now protect every single restaurant when a lot of them are going to go out anyway? What does that look like? We're looking at, Ben Allen has a bill to allow for alcohol, extending out deliveries for alcohol for businesses that want to do takeout with alcohol. We're looking to extend what's already been the executive order. A number of other kind of small things like that, but that help try to make your life a little bit better where we can. But the magnitude of the problem, there was a bill that was introduced in Northern California, which was killed in San Francisco, which basically says if you have a business, you don't have to pay your rent. You get free rent in a business. Well, that's great, but at the same time, the cascading effect in the whole financial system is extraordinary. So we're trying to figure out what we can do that works for folks, that's reasonable, but isn't insane. Because some of the stuff that people want to just pander to interests, we have to manage a series of complex issues in society and measure them all against each other. And I'm just telling you, I was speaker during the energy crisis, as David knows, and that was pretty mind-numbing. We don't think about it. Traffic lights were going out, hospitals were losing electricity, manifestation was extraordinary. This is 10x over that. It's so challenging. But my question is, and what I've been focusing on is the valley that I represent and fight the hell for, as everybody knows, and focusing on intelligent thinking on economic recovery for the state, as the governor's been focusing on testing and all the pandemic related issues that you hear him talk about every single day. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if I missed anything, but I'm hoping I've given you some insight and some broad thinking about what we're trying to do. And one other thing I just want to share, the thing is about the legislature, it's a very social enterprise. People are always in the hallways, you're talking to people, what's happening, you've been there in Sacramento, seeing people in the hallway and all this stuff. Now is completely shut down. We're only allowed one staff person. I get two because I'm the majority leader and I got one of those big fancy offices, but it's very, very hard. And we have these committee rooms of different sizes. We only have 2 committee rooms now for holding hearings because one is the big hearing room and the other one is we hold hearings on the floor. We got plexiglass and all this stuff to protect people. And between hearings, we got general services to come in and wipe down the whole room. After somebody speaks at a podium, we have to wipe it down. We have people calling in. And one of the interesting things about this is it's dramatically increased the participation because you can sit home on your couch and call in and voice your opinion. And so the other night we had some nights ago, we had a budget committee hearing with 300 people call in past midnight. you know? So we've actually increased participation, but the process has really slowed down. So we have dramatically, and this is kind of one of my jobs, which has been quite painful because a lot of people are pissed off to tell people, hey, we're cutting your bills down. Judiciary would take 84 bills. We're only hearing 20 because the assembly doesn't have a bill limit. When I was speaker, I had 30 bills. Now they have 50 bill per member times 80. It's 4,000 bills, right? Crazy numbers. And we just say no. And, you know, members get really upset when you don't hold hearings on their bills, but we just can't manage it all. We're going back on, I'm driving up on Sunday because I don't want to fly up, and I'm just going to stay up there the entire 5 weeks. The session ends August 31st, and you know, having to manage all these details is just extraordinary. But the whole process is slowed down. No, you know, all the calls are Zoom. No lobbyists are let in the building. If you want to get in the building, you got to fill out a questionnaire. You got to have your temperature taken. You got to have a sergeant walk you to the hearing rooms. It's very different in terms of how it all works, and the process is just slowed down to a grind. And yesterday, I'm on the phone. We're working like crazy on this issue of remote voting. Are we going to do that? We have, you know, a number of members in the assembly so far, no senators who have gotten infected, number of staffers who've gotten infected, family members of them who've died. It's just, you know, the responsibilities of dealing with these great challenges of the government, and yet trying to manage this very difficult institution. We all have it in our businesses and other stuff. I just wanted to share some insights that we have in terms of what's happening in Sacramento. So with that, David, take it away.
Well, I'll start it off with the questions. For those of you who would like to ask a question, I'm moderating them. So please enter your questions in the group chat area, and I will take them in order. But there's a question that I wanted to ask, Senator. We have businesses, you know, in the personal care industry, hair salons, nail salons, and they are struggling to get clear guidance on, you know, there's different things coming down from the state board that regulates hair salons and other, you know, that industry. Are they communicating with LA County Department of Health? Are they communicating with the city? Is there coordination happening? Because I had a owner who sent me guidelines from the state that, you know, were different from the guidelines from the county. I know they can be stricter. They can't be less than, but they can be stricter than the policies. But there seems to be a disconnect there. And I just want to make sure we have owners who are doing everything they can to transition to outdoor operations. You know, we have owners looking at doing, you know, cutting hair in the parking lot. They want to know that they're following the rules. How is that communication happening?
Well, first of all, you know, the governor always talks about real time. I mean, it's hard because stuff's moving so fast. I literally got a haircut in Encino, unfortunately, not Sherman Oaks. My barber's there in Encino, and I actually talked to him the other day because he asked me the very same question, David. You know, the reality is that, you know, the governor wants to give flexibility to locals and says, here's the guidelines, exactly right. You can be stricter, you can't be looser than what they are. So they're trying to coordinate as best they can, but the truth of the matter is things are moving so fast and changing and the like, and it's very, very hard. You know, I mean, personally, if it was me, I on this mask thing, I don't know what you guys think, but, you know, you don't wear a mask, we're going to fine you a lot of money, because the impact on society is so great for people that aren't wearing masks. Forget the politics. It's abundantly clear from the science that this is a really big deal. And if it isn't, you know, the spread is extraordinary and people not wanting to wear masks. But the reality, the answer to the question is you got to follow the stricter of the two guidelines, which is the county, I believe, than the state. And, you know, there is some reason for the governor doing this because, you know, in Northern California, you got Alpine County that has no cities. It takes 123 people to get elected to the Board of Supervisors, right? They have no cases. Modoc County, no cases. Lassen County. So you got to kind of, and so you've got this county difference between like Orange and Riverside and LA and stuff, which are the big stuff that's happening. So it's just a flexibility. Follow the more strict guidelines. If the county's more strict than the state, then you follow them. You know, personally, I don't know, man. I would have I'd be a lot tougher on some of this stuff to just nip it in the bud earlier, because we're going to keep going back through these cycles of stuff and we got to just get rid of it. I've got friends in Europe, and they've done a really, really good job there. And it's open, and a lot of the stuff, the businesses are open, and things have changed dramatically, and people get it. And you got to just act quickly, nip this thing in, this invisible enemy in the bud. This is, we're almost at the point now where more people have died since World War II from COVID than they have from all the wars combined, Korea, Vietnam, and Middle East and all that stuff.
Okay, I have a question from Barry Weiss at Mathnasium. With regard to education, can state money be moved to support education at the for-profit learnings, to support education related to for-profit learning supplements? The kids are way behind, and they are going to need help that the local school districts cannot provide via distance learning.
No, it's been a big debate about vouchers and the whole issue with teachers unions and stuff that you can't use, and it's been a whole fight between public education and private education, that you can't use tax dollars. I mean, we have done things like in the Jewish community where we're providing security we just did a big fund last year, another fund where there's Jewish schools, state schools and stuff because of the public safety risk. And so we're using state dollars to provide security for schools, religious institutions, and things like that, but very limited. But for educational purposes, it's just, it's a big right line, and I just don't see a chance of that happening.
Okay. Question from Sandy Rosenholz of Senior Resources. Keeping the budget is nice to say, but why can't government, including employees, take a hit just like the rest of businesses? Maybe cut budgeted items by, say, 20% and use that money for small business, daycare, school preparedness.
We already we have in our budget required all state employees to take a 10% pay cut. That is in the deal. So it's not 20%, it's 10%. It's in the budget, it's required, it's happening. That money has been used to balance the budget to avoid further cuts.
Okay, we have a question. We have a question from Sherry. Senator Hertzberg, thank you for taking the time to meet with the various neighborhood councils and organizations. We really appreciate it. What is the reason that state, county, and city government can't organize and get serious about nipping the COVID pandemic in the bud? Well, I think we've kind of been addressing that.
Yeah, but Charlie, just real quickly, I mean, I got to tell you, man, that's been one of my big pet peeves since ground zero. You're a taxpayer. What do you care whether it's the state or the city or the county or the federal government? It's your money. Figure out and fix it. But human nature is such that these institutions compete. I mean, it's so stupid that in the state legislature, there's fights between the Assembly and the Senate where people have the same political views, not invented here, not my idea. You have no idea on these economic recovery ideas I've talked to you about how challenging that's been. It is absolutely insanity that we have all these different levels of government. But people like, this is where I raise money, this is where I get power, this is how I get a press release. I mean, it's crazy. I can't tell you in the city of Los Angeles how many times at the state I've gotten money for the city, and then the city council members don't invite you to the things because they want credit. I was on stage with a council member in the city where I brought a bunch of money for fire stuff, and they was told by their staff to get off the stage because it was a town meeting, and I was there and I'm bringing a ton of state money and trying to show camaraderie and stuff together. So I mean, it's just horrible. It's beyond horrible, and it just makes me go crazy. And I invite everybody, be inclusive on everything as possible, both with respect to different levels of government and with respect to different parties. Don't forget, I elected unanimously as speaker. I don't sweat the small stuff. People have different points of view. But the bigger issue is I completely agree. And as somebody who lives inside the system, it's one of the things that makes me go crazy. It's just nuts. I can't tell you. I mean, at the county level stuff I've had to do, fights I've had to do, on the issue of the new transit line, fighting for the $180 million for the Valley, full page ad we took out in the Daily News, all the stuff we've had to do to convince these guys. It's the worst part of government.
Thank you.
This question is from Tammy. I am seeing several small businesses that are doing well during this pandemic, receiving large PPP forgivable loans. For example, accountants and law firms. It seems if you have a good relationship with the bank, then you are more likely to receive a better deal.
True,
Comments?
true, true. It's true. And they know how to fill out the paperwork better than everybody else and to scam the system, and it's true. And the federal government is just loosened up the money in that kind of a way, and you know, it's horrible. It's one of the weaknesses of the system, but I know that to be the case, and you know, they're expert paper filler outers, and you know, and they know the system and they can game the system. I think that's true. And you know, I've heard some tremendous number of stories where people didn't even need the money and they got the dough. And they get a lot of money. I've seen people get $1 million check. I've seen people with $250,000 checks. It's unbelievable. But this system is you know, I don't know. You know, I'm not that learned on how it works because I'm spending so much time at the state, so I haven't studied it as much. But anecdotally, you're not wrong. And anecdotally, kind of a larger dynamic in society. The people that know how to work the system better win better. So it's just kind of human nature. I hate to be so flippant about it, but it's true. And if I would do that drafting the system, I would have written it in a different way and built authority around communities where you really do the people that are needed, the ability. But literally, you fill out these forms, and these people are getting huge checks. It's crazy. I mean, there are people that are getting it that are needing it. There's no question about that. But there's a lot of you're going to probably see a lot of abusive cases as the press starts coming out future. But you saw the president doesn't want to release any information about who got what money. Basic principle of your tax dollars is what it is. Sorry, I would give you a more optimistic answer, but it's the best answer, you know, is the truth.
Question from Mr. Horace Height. SB 1410. Why 10 years with no interest do tenants have to pay back their rent?
Well, here's what happened. You know, last Friday, I had a bunch of protesters in my house with bullhorns and cameras. I don't know if you guys saw it on TV, because there's people legislators in San Francisco that want to give free rent for over a year, anytime there's an emergency, and you never have to pay it back. We had to construct something that made sure people didn't lose their homes and push more people out. We had to do it in a way where we didn't put burdens on the budget. We had to do something that was constitutionally permissible. Some of the proposals that are out there are unconstitutional. You can't tell somebody and interfere with contract. It's a basic constitutional principle called interference with contract. And you can't go out and tell somebody that you can't kick anybody out. They don't have to collect rent and they can stay there. Because if they do, the government will lose and have to pay the bill. Inverse condemnation. No question about it. So the question was, how do we create an intelligent system where we can get some money to a landlord, we can keep people in the place and avoid this tumbling problem? Because quite frankly, if you're a landlord, right, and you have a tenant and it takes, first of all, the courts aren't entertaining unlawful detainer actions. So if you take 6 months to get somebody out, you're never going to collect the back rent anyway, right? And then the person's out there put on the street, they can't find another place or whatever. So how do you construct a system? So basically, none of this is all in the bill yet, but this is kind of where we're going in terms of what it looks like. You can't have a system where somebody gets free rent forever, because once they stop paying rent, then you say you got to pay rent again, and it's hard to get them to pay rent. And again, just like I was talking about finance, you've got to understand from the beginning to the end, from the tenant all the way through the financial markets, and how we rely on the structure of money, and you can't completely upset it. So what we decided to do with the state was to step in and basically pay the rent. And you know, how do we deal with that? So the first thing is, if you're, for example, you got to be qualified. You can't be an investment banker and says, I'm out of my job, I'm unemployed, but I have $4 million in the bank. Doesn't work. So you got to be a qualified person. I don't know what experience people are having with respect to that, but I've talked to a lot of landlords and they're not having too big of a hit. I hear some numbers in the press, but I don't see them in terms of reality of people not paying the rent. So let's assume, for example, you're a qualified person. Now, once you're qualified, the idea behind this, none of this is fully fleshed out. I'm just giving you my broad picture thinking, Horace. You go and the government says, kind of like a Section 8, okay, how much can you afford? You got $1,100 a month rent, you can afford $100 for this example. Fine, pay the landlord the $100. The state comes in and pays the $1,000, okay? And now the person stays in, and hopefully my thinking is to get it to 6 months. So it's a maximum of 6 months program. The further thinking is you give everybody a credit card. So they know that that credit card is good for 6 months. And so that at month number 7, they got to pay the rent. Otherwise, they're thinking, I don't ever have to pay rent again. You get used to not paying rent. So now you have a 6-month credit card. That money goes and you give the credit card to the landlord. The landlord then takes that and gets it for a tax voucher. The tax voucher is valuable in 2024. You say, what the hell am I going to do? Why am I talking with a tax voucher? I got to pay my mortgage with it. Well, if you do or you don't. If you don't have to pay your mortgage with it and you have a tax voucher and you hold it for a year, you now get capital gains treatment on that tax voucher. So your tax rates go down from whatever the personal rates are down to, federal capital gains. There's no state capital gains, but it's a dramatically improved benefit. If you need the cash, we're going to have the banks accept that voucher for you. They're going to sell it. And let's just assume, for argument's sake, the $1,000 vouchers were $650. So now the bank will deposit, after they take their fees, of course, they'll deposit $650 in your account. You got $100 from the tenant. You now got $750 rent on a property where you would have gotten $1,100 if they paid in full. But at least you got something and you can stay alive. We at the state have stepped in as a third-party player. Now you ask, well, what about the 10-year payback time? I'm the tenant. I'm out of work, right? I've got 6 months of rent. And now you don't owe that money to the landlord. You owe that money to the state because the state paid your rent. Now, the idea was that we're going to give, welcome to my world of sausage making, man. There are people that wanted everything for free. We wanted to give the greatest amount of time to be able to allow someone to pay it off, and it's interest free. So the way it works is, if it turns out you get back and you got your job and you can afford it, based upon how much money you make, we're going to take that money back. So in that example, we paid $6,000 for you. We're going to take it out of your tax return or your payroll or whatever it might be. Let's assume you're a law student and you're broke, but then you get out and you get a job as a lawyer in year number 3 or 4, you got to start paying it back so that there's some level of responsibility. Now, obviously, interest-free is valuable. Obviously, 10 years is valuable in terms of the payback, but this is kind of the political compromise we had to engage in the give and take in the legislature to get something like this passed through the Senate, which we've had passed through the Senate. We're going to further amend it when it's in the Assembly, but that's the concept. It avoids people getting homeless, takes care of landlords. If you need the cash today, you'll get a significant piece of it. I'm guessing it's $650. It might be $750, depending upon what the market value of these things are. Or if you want to hold it, you get the capital gains treatment on it, and you actually get a better rate of return on what you got, because you still get the $1,000 and you get the capital gains treatment. So it's it's one of these things that the tenant groups hate because they want free rent, and it's one of the things the landlords are a little upset about because they don't know what to do. But the reality is, courts aren't entertaining unlawful detainers anyway. You never get any money anyway, and so it's kind of a way to balance it out and deal with all of the various social and economic pressures we're dealing with. Make sense? Yeah.
We have another question.
Horace, did you say something? You okay? Yes, you're still on mute, Horace. Hit your unmute button in the lower left-hand.
I got him. You're good, Horace. Go ahead.
I want to thank you for thinking of us, because we are businesses. We have bills to pay. We have properties to maintain. We have insurance. We have to replace air conditioning units. So at least you're thinking of property owners, and I really appreciate that. I don't think the city and the county are necessarily doing the same, but thank you.
Thanks, Horace. Yeah, David.
Yeah, we have another question kind of similar to the hair salon issue, but it's regarding essential workers, state versus county and city interpretation for acupuncture doctors being essential. Same topic mentioned, alcohol and cannabis is essential, and so is acupuncture, traditional medicine. Cannot stop treating chemo patients who have cancer. Patients with pain are being overprescribed opiates. We're being lumped in with tattoo parlors. It's not reasonable. We need clarification from the governor's office. Can you help us out?
Well, can I just take a personal point of departure on that for a second? In 1973, a very famous lawyer by the name of Harrison Hertzberg, my daddy, represented Chinese people that were practicing acupuncture in California, and they were being thrown in jail because they were practicing medicine without a license. And he took the case to the courts, and basically the bottom line is made acupuncture legal. He says, here's a medicine that has been around for 5,000 years, and you Western medicine people don't agree to it. And basically did that, and then worked on creating the law that made it legal. And so I was involved with all this stuff way back when. My oldest brother has cerebral palsy, and his one hand is smaller and he can't hold it. They put a couple of needles, and for the first time in his life, he could open his hand. I saw open heart surgery and brain surgery with acupuncture. I am a believer, and it is, from those experiences many, many, many years ago, Orange Peel. And so I don't know what the rules are. I'm asking Hannah, who's on the line there, to make a note and follow up. I don't know about the clarity of all this stuff. There's so many. You know this story, Neil. I've told you a long time ago, but everybody else gets the benefit of the Harry Hertzberg story. Actually, in my closet, I've got the pic. In those old days in courtrooms, they wouldn't allow cameras, and they used to drop pictures, and I got that picture from KGO in San Francisco when he was in court arguing and holding up the little mannequin. It's kind of cool. But I'll follow up on it and see what the story is. I just don't know. I don't know the answer to the question.
Thank you, Senator. Sandy, I'm going to get back to your other questions once everybody else gets their first question answered. Hold on.
Bob, I'm gonna call your office and I'll give them the details and have them lay it out for you.
Yeah, just talk to Hannah. She's on the phone because she'll know what it's talking about.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Neil.
Okay. Why is it?
Okay, give you guys 1 second. I got kind of an urgent leadership call I got to deal with here. Let me just give me one second. Let me see if I can deal with this. Welcome to the world of leadership. Hold on. Thanks.
Always the multitasker.
Dave, I have a question for Horace so we can get enlightened. Can I ask it?
Yeah.
Horace, how are your rents coming in? You're the only landlord here that's got a lot of things. What's happening with you with your rents? To give us an idea, the general public.
We're losing $50,000 a month. So for 4 months, that's $200,000.
Wow.
And that is approximately what we pay in taxes a year. So we are impacted, and we do need the relief. And one of my co-workers has a question. When the money is paid back by the tenants, it goes to the state. Is that correct? Oh, I'll write it down if he's not there. Okay, he might not have heard that.
No.
You want me to repeat it? Bob, I was asked by David how much we're losing a month during this crisis. And in rent with my properties that are all in Sherman Oaks, we're losing $50,000 a month.
Wow.
And it's not going down.
And what's the vacancy rate? Not the vacancy rate. What's the non-payment of rent rate? How many people aren't paying? How many units do you have, and how many people? What's the percentage of people not paying?
Okay, well, we have 215 units. And how many?
20.
About 20 tenants aren't paying.
20.
Yeah, but we also have vacancies. We have about 8 vacancies. But that's resolving itself. So I'm not concerned about vacancies. I'm just concerned about tenants that may not really be as impacted by COVID as they say.
And do you have any evidence of that?
Do we have evidence? No.
Well, we have some tenants who, I'm not saying they're not they say that they're out of work, they can't pay their rent, but yet they're pulling up and getting expensive items delivered, like flat screen TVs, new cars, that kind of stuff. That indicates to me that the system that we've set in place is not working.
I would say that indicates that, yes. Okay. But basically you're saying it's a 10% rate in essence, round numbers of people that aren't paying.
There's about 20 people. It's about 10%.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Wow, okay.
So remember though, in our case, we have a lot of property to maintain that aren't apartments.
Right.
Yeah, it's just what it is. It's what it is. We have 10 acres, so we have to maintain that also.
Yeah. Okay.
We just have a couple of other general questions. I know Sandy has some questions about state versus local ordinances having to do with, why is it okay to be able to go into a Rouse with 150 people, but it's not safe for me to get a haircut with one person. I could probably answer that question Sandy myself, like direct person-to-person contact, and you're right on top of it. I think that's the main difference. I don't have any other additional questions unless you want to elaborate on that, or if there's anything that you wanted to say in conclusion as we conclude our conversation.
Well, I think, just thanks for doing this, and it's really important to me, and it's hard to, I like being involved. I go to all the neighborhood councils. I go as much as I can, even though I represent 1 million people, because I'm old school. But I think that the answer is, number one, is kind of what I was talking to Mike about earlier. If there's anything that you think that we need to share with respect to the virus in the Valley, that's a Valley-related issue, if you can get it to Hannah, get it to David, who'll get it to Hannah, I'd appreciate it. That would be valuable, because I'm trying to really be a pulse beat of the community to get out to folks and not just be some rat-think politician, self-promoting stuff. It's about using the office as a vehicle in that regard. Secondly, to the extent that other issues, you're the front lines. You're the ones who are experiencing these challenges and stuff, these stories, the horses issue and all this stuff. I need to know about this stuff. It's important to further inform the debate. One of the issues, one of the great benefits of government, especially today, is we have all of these inputs, right? Sometimes disproportionate to what is reality and doesn't really reflect the voice of the community. And so I need for you guys to get me that voice. It's critically important to help inform these discussions as I'm sitting in the room trying to make decisions. I need more inputs from people who are real people, who are really on the ground, who are really experiencing stuff, and that's you. So any of that stuff is extremely helpful. Anybody who knows working with me, you can't outwork me. You can't get, I just dog it, and I'm around the clocker type person and read everything and do all the homework. Ask Hannah. She's aged about 10 years in the last year, but I just push it to the edge of the group. So I just need that input, and that value you have is extremely important. We've been, we're really trying to take care of folks, even though like the EDD is Employment Development Department is so slow. Part of our management process is to call people back. Hey, this is where we are. Let people know. A lot of offices aren't even answering their phones. We're out there. We have the Steve Fukushima in our office set up all the Google things. So wherever you are as a staffer, if that phone rings, it goes to you, and we have the whole thing set up to be responsive to people and trying to work as hard as we can to be a resource. Everybody is out there on their own, but I'm like, hey, I tell everybody, look, we're the military. This is it. This is a big crisis, and our job is to not blink and to work our guts out to help folks. And this is the time for our office to shine. And so we've been really dogged it in a significant way, and that means that we want input. I'll never forget that some years ago, before I got elected, when there were budget cuts, an assembly member once said that told her staff to close up the office because that way they won't have so much work, right? I mean, that's a true story. I couldn't believe it. But seminary from the Valley, long ago. But that's not our view, and I just need the input. So to the extent that if you hear stuff or whatever, just shoot it our way. I want to know. We want to be in the deal, not just to put it out, but to help us inform decision making. We only got 5 weeks left of the legislative session. We're out, as I said in the intro, August 31st, and we got a lot to do, and I want to get it right. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get it right. So especially when I'm up in Sacramento now for the next 5 weeks, I'm in a bubble up there, and I don't want to be in a bubble. So help me, please.
Well, and I can echo that. Nobody knows constituent services and does constituent services better than Senator Hertzberg, because that's where I learned what government was and what it could do. And so, if you have an issue or a problem and you send it to him, it's going to get addressed.
He's the man.
So take the time. Anything that you want to send to me, I will forward along to Hannah.
And just so in my philosophy, once a Hertzberg staffer, always a Hertzberg staffer. David is still part of the team. He might work for you guys, but he still works for me. So make him work hard. That's the way I roll,
Rob
Hannah,
Hertzberg for president.
we've had, David will tell you this. I think Hannah's in charge. We've over 400 and some interns in the office of all ages, trying to provide opportunities for the next generation Mike was an intern. There's an example. He was an intern. Do you believe that? True story. And really reach out. Dave Fleming is my senior advisor. I used to pay him $1 a month. I gave him a raise. I think he now gets $1,000 a month. He's got an office bigger than mine, and he's very helpful in doing stuff, helping out and reaching out as part of the Valley. He's Mr. San Fernando Valley, and he lives in Studio City, but he's totally part of our team. So we've got people from high school to, and actually just an old story. David probably remembers this, that when she was 90 something years old, Dave Fleming's mother worked in our office, and she would review everything. She was a ticketer. She would review everybody's documents, make all the corrections. In 90 something years old, when his request for employment came in, the Senate Rules Committee said, "You made a typo on your date of birth." Because Dave's 85 or 86 now, something like that. Oh, it's hilarious. But no, I love having those resources and the outreach and stuff like that. And any other ideas you got, I'm all in.
We have Eden Alpert here, who's a restaurant owner who's been closed down since the pandemic. You want to talk about that, Eden? Can we unmute her?
I
am muted.
You're still muted.
Now you're good. Oh, now you're not good.
We still can't hear you.
Okay, am I
There you
there?
go.
Okay, I was not reading directions. Sorry about that. Yeah, we've been shut down. Herb Alpert being my partner and my father, we've decided that we don't want to risk that being that place that had opened up and then possibly had something happen where someone got sick, a staff member or a guest. And he still feels that even when we do get the okay to open up, and we have nowhere to go with outdoor patio. There's a couple other restaurants in the Glen Center that have, because we're in the Beverly Glen Center, we're, borderline Sherman Oaks. And he said, if we open up again, we're going to hold off for another couple weeks, because this is so unpredictable, and we don't want to risk being that restaurant that opened and someone somehow got sick in our space. And we're very much indoors, so we can't really, we're not that type of place. We're a music venue, food.
Yeah.
We're ready to go, COVID ready. We are set and ready. We've been ready, and we're updating the menus and doing all that we need to do. But we've lost 4 tenants in the Glen Center since all this has happened.
Which are the other tenants?
One of them is a store called the Peace Collective, Eden Sassoon's Pilates, and they're forcing her to continue to pay rent through December because that's what her lease is for. But there's but she just can't open. The Yellow Dog, and there's one other, oh, the hair salon. So, and they're not giving any kind of breaks to anyone. They're being very, very hard on everyone.
Who's the landlord?
Wendy and Pamela Goldman.
I don't know them.
They took over, they inherited it from their father. So it's been pretty nasty.
Who's the
up
father?
there.
No?
His name was David Goldman. He was a very respected, he owns that whole Glen Center.
Right.
And they inherited it. So we're paying, we're in a very different, unique situation. We're still paying all of our staff. We did get PPP later on. Herb had decided that he was going to pay no matter what through the end of, he keeps extending it. I don't know if he'll continue to do that. And some of the staff are also getting paid and getting unemployment. So it's been a very interesting situation. And up there,
your dad, I just a sidebar with you know Lou Adler, right? He's from the old days, Lou. And your dad, they supported me when I ran for mayor 15 years ago. It was cool.
Can we have you back for mayor? That would be great.
Yeah, no. Yuck.
I know, right? But thank you for this information today. It was really, really helpful. My hands are tied up there, obviously, and it looks like and if I had to guess, we're not opening anytime in the near future.
Wow.
I mean, it looks like they're going to shut down again. So if some of the ones that are outdoors, that's great, but we just don't even want to take it to the parking lot.
Really? Shame.
Yeah.
Wow. It's hard. But, again, just one thing on the close. The reason why I was talking to you about the bigger picture stuff is I wanted to, what happens in politics is it's easy to just say, give you what you want to hear and give you the stuff. I think that when you approach problem solving, whether it's in your business or your life or whatever, you create the architecture of what the problem you're trying to solve and show how it fits together. Because, literally, thousands of people come in with all kinds of interests, and everybody thinks that the rotation of the Earth is going to stop unless you solve their problem. And our job in trying to balance the issues in a republic and with a core set of values is to frame that. And that's why I wanted to frame the big picture for you and to give you some sense of that we're thinking about this in kind of an adult sort of a way. And I've been really working hard at that stuff. It's quite challenging, but you can call any deal, you can a press conference or whatever, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's the problem in the system. Everybody reaches for the low-hanging fruit that looks good for a press release or reads a poll, and that's not what you do to really solve problems, in my judgment. So thanks, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. I'm off to 55,000 a day. Huggy Bear. Yeah, can you imagine how they busted me for that shit? I can't believe that, but that is what it is, man.
Well, you know what are okay? Are air hugs.
Air hugs, that's right. But let me tell you, just that the backstory, the backstory behind that is, look, I never denied it because everybody on this call knows I hug everybody. So I can't deny that I didn't hug anybody. But the woman who claimed that I hugged her, I never met her, and she was paid $10,000 by the bail industry, as was the people who put the story out there, and the other two people, because that's what happens. I won a $61,000 judgment against the bail industry attorney's fees the other day, so I'm gonna go collect that pretty good, just because I pissed off that they just came after me. They sued me 4 times, on this bail reform thing. But when you get in these fights, that's the way it is. And by the way, on the ballot, I've got 3 initiatives on the ballot that I did. I got bail, which is Prop 25. Vote yes. I've got privacy, which is Prop 24 that I've negotiated. Vote yes. And then thirdly, I've got Prop 19, which is I negotiated with the realtors and the firefighters that basically allows for portability of the big piece of it allows for portability of your home. So if you bought your home, say in 1970 at 50 grand, and today it's worth $1 million, right? Your property tax might be valued at $1,000 a year. If you sold your place and wanted to buy something new for $500,000, you're going to pay $5,000-$6,000 a year in property tax. We allow you, if you're over 55, to move your property tax to any part of the state. The reason that's valuable is a lot of folks that are on fixed incomes that have expensive homes today that weren't expensive, that don't have a mortgage payment, are fearful of selling their homes because even if they can buy homes with cash, they're afraid, oh my God, I'm going to buy a new home and the tax bill is going to be $10,000 a year and I can't afford it, right? So the idea for the real estate community is that the estimate it will free up 75,000 homes a year where families will want to move into neighborhoods where a retired person might be, and then the retired person can cash out, get their tax benefits from cashing out and not be subject to this big piece. So I worked on that, and there's a small piece of an inheritance piece that goes to support fire districts. So it's a combination of a deal between the realtors and the firefighters, and I negotiated that in the ballot. Prop 19. Vote yes on that too, please.
I'd like to share a hug story. 2 years ago at the Granada Hills Street Fair, Bob sees me. I didn't see him. I turned around. He comes over. Not only did he give me a hug, now I'm not a small person. He picked me up off the ground.
I did?
Yeah.
Wow.
There, I was there. I saw that.
You did.
I got a hug
I'm
from Bob.
guilty.
He's a hugger.
That's right. What the heck? Unbelievable.
I just want to point out that Hannah posted her email on the side. So if you have specific issues that you would like to follow up, refer, just in the chat section, her email is there. And Senator, we want to thank you again for joining us this afternoon for this great conversation. You are a great advocate for us. Keep fighting in Sacramento for us. And we'll keep your finger on the pulse, especially as it relates to the business community. And just let's keep the communication lines open with those state boards that are overseeing the industries and how they're communicating with the local county health department. I think that continues to be an issue that various industries and the membership are dealing with right now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Take care.
Okay.